Welcome to the Tennishackery podcast. This is the place where we discuss all things about tennis that relate to the fundamentals, the fitness, and the mind game. Uh, Today we have Soham and Craig for episode 16. Hi, guys. How you doing?
Hey,
Hey,
good guys.
Soham.
It's nice to see you guys, Tarun and Craig. Happy Sunday.
Yep. Happy Sunday. I see you're wearing a Niners hat, Soham. What's the deal?
Super excited that we finally won a game after like three straight consecutive losses. I could have worn my Dubs hat. Dubs won too, so let's go
Yep.
Dubs.
Yep.
So,
I'm wearing my Adidas hat. They sponsor me and this podcast. Just kidding.
what about Craig?
I,
Craig's not wearing anything. Well,
I
I
should
see
have
Indian wealth.
I should have worn a hat. So and let's make that I'm wearing something. Let's go with that.
Yes.
Good to be
Yeah,
here.
yep, nice to be here. Uh, I'll launch straight into the marketing spiel. So yes, you can find Tennis Hackery at Tennis Hackery with a Y. You can find us on Instagram, X, which used to be Twitter. The video form of the podcast goes to YouTube. It's exactly the same handle at Tennis Hackery. The audio format goes to Spotify. Please like, share, subscribe, comment, and review. Your feedback is extremely critical for our growth and for us to evolve and to respond to the content that people would like to be discussed here. So with that being said, let's launch into the episode. So today is episode number what, 16. We made it. So it's December, and today we thought we would have a good discussion on the top mistakes that we as coaches see common on in commonly seen in match play, whether it's singles, doubles, whether it's juniors or adult recreational players. So Soham, what do you think? Why don't you start? Take it away.
The first thing I want to say is, instead of saying like even a mistake or something, it's like, what can we learn from, right?
Absolutely, yes.
Uh, so I want to use like a positive spin on this. And there are so
Absolutely,
many,
yes.
as coaches, being spectators to our junior matches, our students' matches, or even as a spectator watching our friends play or anybody else at any tournaments play, there's a lot that you can learn. There's a lot that can be critiqued, and there is a lot of takeaways, even for the juniors, for example, because
Yeah.
they're learning tennis. They have a long way to go, and usually like a dialogue post match, like a post-mortem of the match, is usually a good way for for juniors or even adults to realize, hey, how can I have done better in a match, win or lose, right?
Yeah.
So I always encourage everybody to pay close attention to their match, so that at the end of the day they can talk about the good and the bad and the ugly, right? And have three or four bullet point takeaways from each match. Now, when we talk about what we observe as coaches, right? I think one of the key things that I want to start the discussion with is being prepared and planning for matches.
Mhm.
I think I think how you train and practice is crucial. You have to almost train with the intensity in practice so that the actual match becomes easier per se. Uh, it may be more difficult, but at least the intensity level should be present in practice, and that's what I encourage all the juniors. And even when I am practicing, I try to be really intense in practice so that the match becomes relatively easier. So, what are your guys' experience watching? Let's talk about juniors and let's talk about singles and doubles, right? Don't want to restrict this to just singles. What are your guys's, and Craig, you can start watching what's the process when you teach your students, uh, what do you tell them? Like, what is the plan for matches? How do you guys plan for your opponents?
Yeah, I think I do think there's a general plan, Soham, like you said, a general preparedness of. I think what you're alluding to is trying to have a match intensity, right? If you're going to play, you have to have a certain intensity level to execute your objectives and try to win your games and your set and your match. Way to do that is in practice for sure.
Yep.
But that's the macro version, right? But then there's the micro version of how does that translate with Olivia, who's 9 years old and she's like super tiny, versus Zach, who's like 13 years old and he's got a big serve and a big forehand already, and maybe his preparedness is, big serve and forehand. So as coaches, we try to have these toolboxes for all these kids and dive into them and make sure they have the requisite set of tools. So Soham says, when you go play your match, using not only the correct set, but you're trying to execute that the way you did in practice. So, that's it's going to be different for all of our juniors, right? So, or all of our rec players and the ladies clinics and the men's clinics and so forth. Because everybody's built a little bit differently with a little bit different tools, and we definitely have to make adjustments according to that individual.
Absolutely. And that's great, Craig. I completely agree with you. And Tarun, I wanted to ask you a question. I know you teach a lot of juniors. One of the things that at least I encourage is in practice for my students to play against match play to mimic like a real-time match situation, is to play different types of players, variety of players. So it's easier that way. When you come across somebody who's a moon baller, you know what to do. When you come across somebody who hits the ball hard, you know what to do. How do you as a coach train and help your students plan for matches so that they're successful?
Yes. So, I mean, I like the points that both of you were alluding to, saying that it starts with the preparations. So, to me, there is game day preparation, and of course, there is a preparation leading into it. So, the lead up to it, I definitely would like to, as the big match gets closer, right? So, you want to encourage more match play. So, so let's say the tournament is in the weekend. The way I would like to kind of split it into phases is initial part of the week, you just do your drills. This is different for different people, right? Drills or whatever fitness work you're doing. But come Thursday maybe play a long match. Friday maybe, just Friday probably best is to take it easy. So physically and mentally, I would like to prepare them that way so that their game the game thing ticks in their brain. Okay, this is the way I need to think. This is the way I need to problem solve. That's the first. And secondly, I would also say that we would also do more of. So the problem is during the middle of one of the problems I've seen in junior tennis is that weekends, right? Let's say people are playing L7s and L6s. They play long matches. Basically, Saturday, Sunday, it's whole day. The whole day is game day. We're probably getting up to 3 to 4 hours of match play. But during the week, everybody trains in blocks of 1 hour, 30 minutes. So that to me is a problem because you're not stressing your neuroskeletal system long enough uh, for the rigors of gameplay. So I would encourage 1 or 2 practice sessions for just match play. So like you said, different types of players. If you can't do that within 1 hour, try to play short 4 game sets, play with no ad scoring, expose them to the stress of match play. And
Exactly. And I think that's the key, right? Like
right,
when you go into a match, the element of fear should not exist, or
right,
it should be as low as possible, right?
yes,
You should not be afraid of competition. You shouldn't be
right,
afraid of
yes,
a certain type of player. So
yes,
so basically during the week is what I gather is, you train, you expand your toolbox, you do a bunch of drills,
right,
you work on your strengths, and you try to improve on your weaknesses,
right,
right? And then you start uh, preparing, playing
right.
against different players. Now, I want to ask a question to Craig. Craig, from my experience, and whether it's at a junior level or at rec level adults, what I've seen is there is a tendency for a lot of players to kind of neglect the serves and the return of serves. Everybody is working on their forehands, backhands, sometimes, volleys and whatnot. But sometimes I feel like serves and return of serves being so important in a game, I feel like at least I see some of my students that they leave it till the end. Can you tell me, like, it's so important in singles and doubles?
Yep.
What's your take on this?
Yeah, it's interesting. I know I've been a part of programs too where I don't know if I want to say I'm guilty of it, but yeah, as director of tennis in certain
Yeah.
places, it's like, you want as many kids hitting as many balls,
Yeah.
playing points as possible.
True.
So guess what is left out? It's
Yeah.
then, serve becomes plan B or C, and then, oh man, we might not even get returns in today because it's such it kind of slows things down. It's a one-shot deal, and are there really a lot of great drills to do that are diverse other than just grinding? And if you have a limited number of courts, it's not the easiest to do. You can certainly do cross court serve and returns with 4 people on a court. We've done that before, but it's not as fun. It's not as rigorous. If Tarun just talked about, you want match play intensity, you want the kids' neuroskeletal system being challenged for hours at a time. Well, that's point play, and
Yep.
that's what we get them to do in training.
Yep.
Unfortunately, how tennis works, it starts with a serve, and the second shot is a return.
Yep.
Every point
Every
of
point.
the match. So those are the 2 balls that get played no matter what. Now they're not the most that get played, but they arguably are the most important because it starts the point for the server and it starts the point for the returner. So yeah, I don't know if I have an answer. I think that's a discussion that I think we need to certainly keep notes on and keep tracks on, because I agree it absolutely needs to be heightened. The awareness of just bringing it up now, I think, gives all of us a renewed deal to go back, especially in these months, where there's maybe not a lot of tournaments going on, and there's certainly some in November and early December, but
Right.
hopefully this next month everybody's working on, or maybe as coaches we make it a priority to lead our juniors into a better service, better return process. I think that is absolutely critical, without giving you a perfect answer right
No,
now.
there's never a perfect
There's
answer.
Right.
And
Right. It's true.
I know Tarun, for example, is a big believer in serves and return of serves. And Tarun, whenever you have come through to my I don't want to say clinic necessarily, but whenever I'm practicing with my students, you're on the sidelines and you're watching sometimes, and you're always encouraging the students be like, keep the first few balls in play. How
Right.
can you talk a little bit about how important the first 3-4 balls and
Oh, yeah.
the point play, how important it is to focus really
Right.
on the first few points? Because I know you really believe in that.
Right. Yes, yes. Actually, Craig very articulated that very well when he said that serves and returns are the shots that are hit the most in a match. Logically, you can see that. And I think we've discussed this before. Craig O'Shaughnessy's, research on Grand Slam, the professional players, where the most frequent rally length in our sport is under 4. So basically, 2/3 of the points end under 4 shots. So now, this being said, what this really says is that you really need to work on the serve, your return, your serve +1 and return +1. So get those first 4 balls in play, whether it's singles or doubles. It's the same rule applies. Get those first 4 shots in play, no matter what, and then you will have some, and then after that the points, you play as you have drilled. Get your cross courts, but it's very important to get those first 4 shots in play. The other point is, as uh, kids advance, like they develop power, and you're
Right.
talking of 15, 16-year-olds, and also adults. The one thing I've also heard is, in tennis, the power is front loaded. What that means is the most power is supplied during the serve, the highest velocity. If the
Mm-hmm.
serve is weak, the return comes back with a higher velocity. So the power is front loaded in the first 2, 3 shots. So if you can get those right and consistently right, you can actually set up your next few shots based on that. And that's so it's very good to build weapons like this and construct your game around those weapons. So that's why I always tell students that, at the bare minimum, get those shots in play. And then as you get more advanced, you can work on, hitting safe targets, maybe more power, more spin, things like that. Like, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
that's a great point.
yeah,
When you talk about if it is in fact four or even
right,
go 5 or 6 points, you got the serve plus
right,
one and return plus one for those
right.
four. And let's say people figure that out, and it's like, okay, well now we're in shot number 5 or number 6. But the control dynamic of the power being front loaded on
Right.
the serve is the only shot in tennis that we have
Right.
that is not reactive.
Yeah.
We are in total control. And the way I
Yes.
like to teach that for our juniors, it's even though their serves are probably the least developed, comes
Right.
across, it develops the least quickly
Yeah.
in most cases. It's tough because that's the shot that can have the most influence on your point. And if it comes across late as a junior developmentally, um, balancing that out as a coach and a player is difficult. But once that does become a thing for that player, you really do have to go for it, and you
Yeah.
really do have to make that
Yeah.
serve plus one an absolute plan. And if that's your plan A, then that needs to be the plan A. We're talking about 10, 9, 13, 14, 15-year-olds. Um, they need to go all in on that plan because their toolbox is not going to be as great
Yep.
as maybe somebody who's more savvy, their body's more mature, when they're older. I think they really have to go in on these points, these shots 1, 2, 3, and 4, serve plus one, return plus one, as much as they can. And I think as coaches, we need to probably do a bit of a better job with that, or keep focusing on that. So that's their primary objective.
For sure. And again, I completely agree, and I've observed all those things myself. I think one of the things that I have seen in tournaments when I go see even my students or other juniors is
Hey, or when you compete in opens too.
yeah. So
Yeah.
two
Yeah.
for 2 points is, of
Yeah.
course,
Yeah.
like, serve is so crucial. Otherwise,
Yeah.
if you don't have a good serve, it puts you under enormous pressure to
Yeah.
break. And again, at a higher level opens, you're playing against people who all serve well. So you're always under pressure, right? So that's one part. The other part that I see common amongst juniors is the tendency to be very they hug the baseline a lot. They believe in hitting big from the baseline. And uh, until I mean, the very good juniors are actually really good at understanding transition game, where you're transitioning forward, you're moving forward, coming into the net, finishing the volleys and overheads. But uh, the juniors who are not at the top level yet, I think they have this notion that grinding and hitting 50 balls every rally is going to win them the point. So this is one of the things that I want to discuss. Is Tarun, this question is for you,
Yeah.
and at least what I have observed is there should be while you're planning,
Yeah.
you need to strategize, right?
Yep. Yep.
Your point play, how you construct the points. You
Yes.
can't just be rallying from the back the entire point.
Yes.
Um, and for this, there's a lot of strategy that's needed. There's a lot of mental strength needed to be able to understand pattern play and
Yes.
all of that, and to execute, whether it's at the net or in transition game, because there's no way you can be
Yep.
hitting winners from the back of the court all the time.
Yep.
So that's one of the common things I've noticed. Tarun, why don't you give me some of your what have you seen, and then Craig, you can talk a little bit about what you have seen amongst juniors.
Yeah, definitely. Like I've seen like long moonballing rallies, and you have also seen scenarios where one player hits a shot, puts a short ball in play, and the other player moves forward, responds to it, and then runs back. So we've seen this instead of following the ball to the net and things like that. So yes, definitely. I mean, I think this is many player. This is probably a function of the drills that the players have gone through. Like baseline play, getting consistent is more important, and people are just comfortable at the backcourt. Side to side movement is good, but front back movement is not that great. So there's a movement aspect to it that, as well, I feel. But yes, it's definitely a function of the kind of drills, live ball drills that kids are exposed to. I mean, for sure, they should be, and this is where I think doubles is great. Like, kids enjoy doubles, and if they're exposed to doubles at an early age, I believe that it helps develop their transition games, because you automatically do some
Absolutely.
of those drills. Uh, you know, you know. So the most common drill I have seen is the three ball drill, where the coach feeds the ball from one side, hit one baseline shot, then approach, then two or three volley combinations, one volley from the service line, then one volley halfway to the net, and then finally a closing volley. But I mean, this is a good drill, but I feel that it's kind of a scripted drill. The pattern in advance. So I mean, I'd like to ask Craig more about this. So I mean, what are some of the things that you do for developing transition game in players?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I try to do all court for
Yeah.
sure. So, it's
Yeah.
important. And sometimes it's based on what we receive
Right.
as much as, we try to send as coaches and players and all our
Right.
juniors, like, how do we send the ball better? And I've talked to you guys about this before, and on this podcast as well. It's like, we are great teachers at sending. Our juniors are great senders for the most part, or that's what we work on. That's what we do a really good job at. But when you receive the ball 4 feet behind the baseline, and whether it's a moon ball or just a high topspin ball, it lands like 2 feet, maybe a
Right.
foot from the baseline, and you're hitting it 4 or 5 feet from behind the baseline. Well, what are you doing with that ball?
Yeah.
And there should be a pretty much just of one. The formula dictates X, and X is what? Well, you're
Yeah.
rolling it high and deep back
Yep.
until you get a neutral ball or a short ball. And then I think if we've got that figured out, because sometimes that takes a while, you got a 13-year-old boy who's 6 foot tall and bigger and stronger than everybody. He just wants to blast the ball from everywhere. It's going to be hard to grow him out of
Yeah.
wanting to hit the
Yep.
ball super hard from 5 feet behind the baseline. But
Right.
once you do get that done, and you get those short ball transitions, a ball that's, you receive a ball that's, we as coaches want the kids to hit an approach shot and not just rip up a winner up the line, and they hit it five
Yep.
feet longer into the fence. And then you get that figured out and they actually hit the approach.
Yep.
It's like, oh my gosh, now we're at the net and we're in the forecourt. What do we do? And, it's usually a hot mess, because we're not spending a lot of time technically on volleys. But,
Yep.
I think it's important, because for me, it's not about the first volley. I like what you talked about, Tarun, where the first volley a lot of times comes inside the service, just barely inside the service line, and
Yep.
then
Yep.
that we usually try not to talk about that as a winning volley or a
Yeah.
finishing volley. You're
Absolutely.
trying to make to me, tennis is easier the closer you get to the net, and it's always
Exactly.
been that way
Yep.
from when I was 9 years old to now. It's always been that way, and it's nothing better than being at the net and just hitting a ball as easy as I can, right over, angling it away, and there's no chance at it coming. I mean, there's virtually zero chance at it coming back, and that's a great feeling. And I think we do need to spend time on that more, because getting these kids up to the net to win points easier.
Mhm.
Because I agree with Soham, it's like, grinding, whether you're at the open level or you're a kid playing an L6, grinding from 5 feet behind the baseline, and Tarun, you said it, for hours and hours and hours, and
Yes.
stressing their
Yes.
body.
Yep.
Well, let's make it a little easier and come in, and if you're not going to get that ball, let's go over that scenario again where everybody's moonballing, and it's a 20 ball moonball rally. Well, I've been working on this with even some of my more vertically challenged girl students who are small. They'll take a forehand out of the air after like a 6 or 8 ball rally. They'll just take a forehand out of the air from no man's land, hit a swinging volley, and then come into the service line and try to finish the point that way,
Yep.
instead of
Yep.
being in this awful rally that somebody thinks is tennis, with these moonballs all the time. So yeah, I know I'm not necessarily addressing the volley question as well, but just getting these kids more comfortable to get to the forecourt, I
Yes.
think, is a start. because to Soham's point, they're not these young juniors at these really high levels are just so comfortable just banging the ball.
Yeah.
And then when they get a short ball, I've even seen kids run back to the baseline instead of
Yeah,
flipping
yeah,
it.
I've seen that
Yeah,
too.
yeah,
See that
yeah,
too? Yeah, right,
It's
Soham?
it's like confidence, right? Like
yeah,
they're just not confident at the net. So I know immediately when I play against some of the juniors who love to play from the back, my strategy is to bring them to the front, force them to volley or force them to hit an overhead, and that's where the mistakes happen. Which is why I emphasize, which is to Tarun's point. I mean, the way I coach is I give equal weightage to singles and doubles. Everybody that I teach, they I make sure that they also play doubles because that's where you
yeah,
improve your
absolutely.
serves, returns, volleys, overheads, all those skills which are very useful in singles tennis. And in terms of like transition game, I think it's very useful. You've seen the pros do it as they age. There's no way you can grind from the back when you're like 45 years old, right?
Yep.
So to shorten the game, I think transition game is key,
Yeah,
and understanding when to come in is also another thing, right? That's where you know you have your opponent on the run. You come in straight away, split step, put the volley away.
yeah.
Uh,
So
setting
on this
setting
transition
it.
game,
Yeah.
uh, one question that I had, when you for you, Soham, and Craig, please feel free to weigh in on this. Is your mentality, are you thinking at the advanced levels, when you see a weak second serve, is your mentality to attack it or and create transition game opportunities, or just hit neutral returns? I mean, how do you deal with this either way when you're playing at a high level or when you're teaching?
I can answer that question from what I do and what I have seen some of my friends do who
Yes.
are actually more technically gifted than me.
Yes,
So
please.
for me, I think I'm not as skilled as some of the people who have actually a lot more technical knowledge or have more experience. I probably tend to play more neutral balls because I'm a baseliner myself.
Okay. Mhm.
But what I actually like, I've seen a couple of my friends do this, is take the ball really early because they're well into the court when they're returning the second serve. They take the ball early and they come into the net. They
Mm.
do that in singles and doubles. People
Yep.
who are actually very comfortable and confident at the net. I think that's a great play.
Okay.
Being ability to take the ball early on the returns and then just come
Okay.
into the net, which is a very good doubles move actually.
Okay.
Put the pressure on right away. Uh, that would be a very aggressive play actually. You don't need to hit the ball super hard. You need to
Mm.
position and you need to angle the ball in a way which makes your next shot, which potentially could be right at the net, easier, right?
Okay.
One of the things I want to add, so Craig, to this, an extension to what Tarun said, you can add to it, but I just want to ask a further question is, a lot of people develop habits. Like in this case, let's take Tarun's example. You refuse to come to the net because maybe you haven't drilled that particular skill or shot, and they just develop like certain habits like, oh, I'll come to the mid court and then for the next shot I'll go backwards, right, instead of coming forwards. What can we do as coaches to change people's habits, because it's very difficult to change that overnight. I mean,
Yeah.
is drilling the best way to do this, like over and over again?
Yeah, I think so. To combine your question with what you answered, Tarun's question is regarding like second serve mentality. I'm going to combine that answer with getting to the net for somebody who doesn't have these habits. Because Soham, you said, oh, somebody may not be as gifted as other people, and maybe we have to approach it this way. And I couldn't agree more with that statement. So if you're a banger and you're a 6 foot, whatever, 13-year-old, and you want to take a two-handed backhand up the line on the deuce court and rip one and then come in, great. Go ahead and do that. But my little 9-year-old vertically challenged girl Can't do that.
Mm. Yep.
So guess what? Maybe she slices it
Mm-hmm.
and then
Yep.
comes in. So
Right.
aggressiveness doesn't always mean, so aggressive mentality doesn't always mean hitting the ball hard and
Yep.
trying to impose your will from a physical standpoint.
Correct.
Being aggressive can be through court position, through shot selection, and it can even be hitting the ball straight back down the middle as long
Yep.
as it's super deep. So if you have better ball control than power, maybe you slice a nice deep ball right
Yep.
down the middle of the court and you come into the net. And then guess what? If you're not the best volleyer, you put yourself in a position where somebody's got to come up with some crazy angle from
Yep.
the middle of the baseline that they really isn't much of an angle there, either on the forehand or the backhand side. And now you've gained an advantage. Perception, it might only be perceptually
Yep.
because you're not a good volleyer,
Yep.
but you're giving your opponent the hardest volley, the hardest ground stroke to pass you with, right? Like
Yep.
a
Mm-hmm.
ball right down the middle with no angles, and you're
Yep.
already at the net. Man, I wish if I could start every point like that, that would be
Very well
that'd
said,
be
Craig.
pretty
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
So educating our juniors and our rec players that those are good plays, and that aggressive mentality doesn't always have to be power and pace. It could be court position and shot selection and mindfulness and thoughtfulness. But we almost have to give our juniors and our recreational players permission
Yep.
to do that. And yeah, and I agree. So it comes in, you have to set those in practice. You have to practice it, and you have to give these players an opportunity, and you have to almost force them. If you're giving them, they're not taking them, then you have to create drills and great practices where they have to come in. It's like you feed
Yep.
a ball, they have to come in and approach, and we do that all the time.
Yep.
How that translates into matches is still not necessarily always what we want to see as coaches, but we have to continue to give them that in our practice sessions in your juniors. And Tarun, to go back to what you said at the
Yep.
beginning of the podcast, that gets them moving, that gets them physical,
Yep.
that gets their bodies, in a lather, which, as a coach, you
Yep.
want your kids to get a good physical fitness effort out there for sure.
Yep.
I'm glad you mentioned the physical fitness part, Craig, because the two other things that we want to touch on, especially at Tennishackery, because we believe in wholesome tennis, right? Is we spoke a lot about the fundamentals side of things, right? Let's talk a little bit, spend a few minutes on the physical aspects and the mental aspects, because both of those are necessary when you're planning for matches, and both of them can hurt you too if you don't, like, for example, in terms of physical fitness, if you don't uh, condition yourself or prepare pre-match, or don't do your stretches or whatnot, and also like post-match stretching and whatnot, those are bad practices. So I think, again, it comes down to habits, right?
Yep.
You got to train your habits, the good habits. And common mistakes are people don't stretch, people get hurt, some people cramp, and physical. Let's talk about the physical fitness part of it. It's crucial. And Tarun, you are big on physical fitness.
Yep.
I mean, tell me a little bit more about how important that is, and if how can people avoid making that mistake of taking it lightly?
Yes, you can't like we actually have an entire podcast episode. Our episode number 3 was physical fitness related, so we'll definitely
Right.
link it in the show notes. So yes, so for match, I mean, if you think about it, tennis is like if you're saying a best of 3 set thing is 2 hours long, so you have to be prepared uh, to spend that time on court. So conditioning, like you said, is very important. Your quickness, your power, like what's your footwork, because all of that translates into footwork, like how quick you're moving, how quick you're off the blocks, how is your recovery, are you recovering every ball, things like that. And because fitness is so important, because the effects, so fitness, the lack of fitness rather manifests itself in many interesting ways. Sometimes it's too subtle, because once fatigue sets in after the first set, on a hot day, what happens is before you feel the physical effects, your brain starts giving you some bad signals saying that, pull the trigger on the shot instead of staying in the point of, you don't have the geometric advantage. Like Craig was mentioning, like you're 3 feet behind the baseline, you have to hit play neutral. But your brain, like once you're starting to fatigue, you start the decision making process goes first. You start pulling the trigger a bit too early, and before you even know, you've lost a series of points, and that's where the momentum part comes in. Your focus and the fitness, they're all related. So it's extremely important for you to be fit to play match tennis.
And it's also tied into the mental part of things, right? Like
Exactly. Yes.
if your fitness is not correct, then it weighs in mentally and negatively. It can affect you
Yes.
in
Absolutely.
because if your body gives up on you, let's say you're playing two matches back to back.
Yes.
Second match is, let's say you played one 3-set match, and then you have to play another match in a tournament uh, after like an hour break.
Yeah.
It's
Not good. Yeah.
physically and mentally exhausting, right? And
Yep.
even at I have played at a decent level like UTR 9-10 people, and it's very tough, especially if you're not used to it, which is why I think just training 1 hour a day may not be enough. Sometimes
Yep.
you might have to train 3 hours a day to see if your body is capable of
Yep.
playing long matches.
Yep. Yep.
And Craig, question for you is how do you train someone's mind uh, in a way, like at least as a coach, so that they are able to um, sustain their fitness over a long match and maybe back-to-back matches? How do you train your students?
Yeah, it's man, it's
Give us
tough.
that magical formula, Craig.
Yeah, and I was just about to say there's no that's exactly it. There is no magical formula. So here's the difference is this
Yeah.
is what is it, the proof is in the pudding. We have a handful of kids who are at our program on court. So they're in our program a handful of days a week. They take privates a handful of days a week, and then they're there on their own for a handful of days a week. So there are six, maybe some weeks, 7 days a week. Guess what? That gives you a better chance of being successful, not only in your matches, but to grow and be more productive as a future tennis player
Right.
and move up to these levels that Soham's talking about to become a UTR, 9 or 10, or go on to play, Division 1, 2, or 3 tennis in California or elsewhere. If you're not doing that, then there's no discussion about, I mean, you can improve, but the improvement is going to be relative. And then
Yep.
it'll be on a level that is more commensurate to your high school team and league tennis and things like that. And these intermediate levels of 3-5, 4-0, and so forth. So, um, there nothing beats time on the court and
Yep.
focus time on the court. And
Yep.
some days, maybe an hour and a half is enough to give your body that rejuvenation. But then if you're doing those 3 or 4 days after that at 2.5, 3 hours a clip,
Yep.
that's probably is going to be what is going to get it done in a focused, not just 3 hours of knucklehead hitting, but it
Right.
has to
Yep.
have, you
Yep.
have to have a
Yes.
plan with
Yep.
some fitness, with some serves, with some returns, or maybe with something you're working on. And maybe sometimes not without a racket in your hand.
Yep.
You're working on some court movement and things like that. I'll send you guys this video if you haven't seen it already. And for those listeners and viewers, there was a video that went around by Alex Deminaur lately. He's putting in a training block right now, which I'm sure most everybody is. And he when he didn't have a racket in his hand, it looked painful. And when he did have a racket in his hand, he was
Yep.
doing a lot of these footwork drills and then having to hit tennis balls afterwards. And it was just, some of these pros, it looks really crazy what they go through to
Yep.
prepare for a match. And whether we address this at the beginning of our discussion on the podcast or in a pre-production meeting, we talked about practicing harder. I think Soham, you brought it up, but practicing more intense than your match.
Yes.
And when I watched the Alex Deminaur clip, I was like, I can't even imagine a match being more intense than
Yeah.
what he's
Yeah.
doing.
Yeah.
And I just hope he had like a puke bucket handy on the court somewhere close, because it just was amazing what some of these men and women put themselves through on the pro tour. And relatively speaking, it's going to take something similar, obviously not at that intensity, but it does take some pretty extraordinary efforts from a fitness and a physical level to prepare for your matches. And at times, Soham, you're correct. You have to put in more hard work during the week. So when you play on the weekends, it does feel a little bit easier. And that's what all the great players that's their process for sure.
Absolutely, absolutely. And
Yeah.
to this, Tarun, I'm going to ask you a quick question, is emotions, right?
Yeah.
Every human has a way to emote. They have different emotions. Some people are super competitive and,
Yeah.
they're more emotional on court. Some people are quiet, reserved. It's everything is, within like inner. They don't emote as much. They don't express as much. It's not visible.
Right.
Um, I have seen a lot of juniors unable to handle emotions. For example, they're playing a match, they get down early, and then it's just a downhill from there.
Yeah.
I'll for me, I had issues before, like I was unable to close matches, for example, and you know, and then slowly as I played more and gained more experience, I understood how important it is to be locked in till the very last point.
Yep.
There were often times when I was, say, up 5-2 in a set serving, and then all of a sudden it's 5-5, and then it's now a tie break, and then there's stress, there is pressure. What I wanna ask you a little bit about, and I know your son and daughter both play, Tarun,
Yeah.
tennis at a competitive level. How do they deal with emotions, or what do you tell them as a parent and or coach? How do you best, you want to use emotions in a
Right.
positive way. You
Right.
don't want emotions to be a negative for you. So
Yes. Yes. Yeah, I mean it's tough. Everybody's different. I mean, even on the high school team that I coach, there are a lot of personalities, and everybody's different. So, but the trick is to, I mean, I feel the trick is to understand that. I'll go back to the point that both you and Craig made, that your practice needs to make you uncomfortable, and your match play is really a feedback mechanism that goes back and informs your practice. So what that really means is, that doesn't mean that your match play is irrelevant or you should not care, but understand that errors will happen, and there is no point in, uh, you should let it go. I mean, I would highly encourage people to watch that Federer video, where he, in his commencements, sorry, in one of the speeches, he mentioned that play the point as though everything matters, leave everything on the line, but once it's over, let it go. Now, everybody's routines could be different based on their personalities and based on their requirements. But I will link this in the show notes. But please do go and see this. You can go to YouTube and search for the 16-second rule by Dr. Jim Lohr. It's extremely important, like what you do in between points, that helps you regulate your energy and your emotion. So, I mean, the experts seem to believe that this is a process by which you can say that, the process of resetting yourself, balancing yourself, they call it centering, and then saying that, using certain breathing techniques. So I have tried to pass on some of this to my students, and I do think that this works, and it's being used at the pro level. So what I'm trying to really say is that, have the right expectations from a match. It's not like, it's the end of the world if you lose matches, and errors will happen, and have a process of what to do in between points. This helps you regulate, your reaction. Emotions are okay, but once you let it go, it's gone. So that would be my 2 cents on this.
I agree. And Craig, how is it different, if at all, in
Yeah.
doubles? I know you play a lot of doubles. Now you have a partner, right? One, maybe you are very emotional, your partner isn't. Like, how does it work like that?
Yeah, it's it depends. I don't know if there's any perfect formula for doubles, but we've seen doubles players who are opposites. You've
Yeah.
got like one of the more successful doubles teams of all times,
Yeah.
Martina and Pam Shriver. You got a tall, fairly athletic person who can hit hard and super smart, and then you have probably maybe the best volleyer ever in tennis
Yeah.
in Martina Navratilova, with one of the best lefty serves ever. So, you get the lefty righties, the tall short, the great volleyers with the tall partner. McEnroe and Fleming were actually, it's
Yeah.
almost like identical on the
Yep,
men's
yep.
tour, right?
Yep. Yep.
And you got obviously the Bryan brothers who won with each other. Sometimes they get hurt, they go win with other people. I don't know which Bryan, you guys can correct me, but whether it was Mike or Bob got hurt and then went and won two majors with Jack Sock and ended up number
Yeah.
one. So I don't know if there's a perfect formula for it, but I think it goes back to all the philosophies that we kind of talked about, all the commonalities of whether it's Navratilova or the Bryans, that they put in the practice. That
Yep.
they've put in the hard yards. So when they go out and perform, when they go out and play on the match, it's probably not the easiest part of their week, but physically it
Yeah.
might be. The
Yeah.
mental part now is the challenge, like Tarun was just talking about, is making sure they're prepared
Yeah.
mentally. And
Yep.
what do they do during the point, the 15 seconds in between? And then one of the things that I wanted to add to that is like, hey, I'd be interested to know how much do you take from the rearview mirror, because you do have to pay attention
Yep.
what your opponent is not liking that
Yep.
you're sending, right? But also you have to keep looking ahead, because you don't want to get bogged down in if you win a great point, if you win a really good point, it's like, okay, don't get overconfident. You're
Hmm.
good. This is
Yeah.
one point at a time. Don't get ahead of yourself. And then if you go on a series of like two or three points where you're not playing great, like, okay, let's let that be. I'm in the present. And so
Yeah. Yeah.
there's a little bit of everything there to unpack. And I think maybe the discussion really is how we manage these
Yep.
things within the game, within those 15 seconds, within the sets and within the matches, and debriefing those with your coaches and so
Yep.
forth. And all those things, like some of the stuff that we hopefully do here. I think those things are really critical to or just as important as the pairings and doubles and how doubles works in general.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, and on behalf of Alex Porter, who's unfortunately on vacation right now, uh,
No, fortunately
Unfortunately.
for her,
unfortunately on vacation
she's
for us.
fortunate.
Yeah.
So
Unfortunate for us.
fortunately,
Yep.
fortunately for her, unfortunately for us, she's not here. But I do want to say on behalf of her, she's so good with all the
Yep.
meditation and just being very calm and having a short memory and just like moving on with points. I know Alex really believes in the meditation part of it
Yep.
things, and she's a great example. Like I have hit with her multiple times, and I see how well she handles herself, handles her emotion. But even though being competitive doesn't mean like you throw rackets or you scream and you shout. And look at the pros, right? I shared something with you guys earlier today about Federer and Nadal between themselves, between the two of them, have smashed like five rackets in their entire career. I mean, they are elite players who are able to manage their emotions pretty well. And this is one advice I would give to my students who I have seen them like bang their rackets a little bit. They may not be throwing it around all the time, but just like tapping their racket on the ground. It's like, don't do that. it's not the racket's fault. Why are you taking it out on the racket? It's maybe you did not move your feet, or you were not paying attention, or you were late to a shot. So you just keep it internal, think about what happened for 5 seconds, and move on to the next point.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that's why I asked about the emotions part, because I know everybody's different. Some people get down really early. Some people are super strong mentally. They're able to come back even they're 5 love down in a set, which is why doing drills, uh, where you are say down, starting a set where you're up 4-0 and trying to close it, or you're down love 4 and trying to come back, are great drills to build your mental strength, which is something that I do with my students for sure. So Tarun and Craig, we have covered a bunch of topics here, whether it's preparation, whether it's the intensity of practice, singles or doubles, the fundamental part of things, the physical fitness part of things, and the mental part of things, all of which are, big for Tennishackery, right? Um, One quick question is, when kids start tennis, right, as beginners, how important is it for them to actually understand the geometry of the court and understand, you know, um, um, like, what is the purpose of tennis, right? Like, that's one of the things I always teach first up is like, understand the court. um, because if you fail to understand the tennis court, what is happening, break it down into thirds or whatever, I feel like they may not be able to understand tennis as well. What are your thoughts, Tarun?
I mean, definitely. I think as they're learning to, especially the younger kids, orange ball kids, they're learning to, like, orange ball is probably between 7 to 11, 10 or 11, depending on their size. Uh, so definitely trying to, you keep understanding how to keep a rally going, because I believe that the serve technique is not well developed. So understanding that, cross courts are better, send the ball to where it came from. So basically, if it's middle goes to middle, cross court goes to cross, and then you can start working on, adding more things like, short ball. You can change directions, things like that. Definitely, it's important, and also understanding that, if you're back, send it back to the same spot that it came from. So initially, definitely, we want to keep it simple. Having them hit targets on court is very important. So telling them where to go. So in that aspect, I even teach 9-year-olds on short balls. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a 3 shot drill, right? So you play a forehand from the baseline, then come to the no man's land, and you show them the target where it's supposed to go on the other side, which is the same spot diagonally across. Send it there to that cone, and then from the net, just roll it over. Things like that. So I think these things, teaching them target oriented tennis, knowing where to go based on where you are, and building those instincts at a young age with drills, super important.
Well said. Because
Yeah.
when I started and I started late, I didn't know any of these things. Tarun, I played you in doubles, first match I've ever played in doubles, and I had no idea.
Yeah.
I was playing doubles as if I was playing singles, right? Because I was not aware of the court geometry on how to target the ball, cross court, or anything of that sort. So that's why I brought it up, because I definitely learned that part aspect of tennis late.
Yeah.
And Craig, one direct question to you is, how I'm assuming that the first 5-10 minutes of a match is so important for players to analyze the strengths, weaknesses, the tendencies of your opponent. And I've also heard you can win or lose a match based on your observation in the first 5-10 minutes.
Yeah.
Do you agree or
Uh,
disagree?
yeah, I think you can. I think you can lose a match in the first 10 minutes. I don't know if you can win a match
Yeah.
in the first 10 minutes, but I think because then once you realize what your
Yeah.
area of opportunity is against your opponent,
Yeah.
and combined with what you do well, if those two things mesh, then you have something to work with for the next hour and a half. Now
Right.
you're working, you're cooking with oil, so to speak.
Right.
So I think those things are critical. And that gets back to other things we talked about today. It's like knowing what you do well, knowing when to send to the right places, and to get back to Tarun's, and you introduced the question to Tarun, Soham, but what he articulately said about hitting the targets and sending, I love the comment of sending the ball back from where it came. We have to understand the geometry of the court, and it's okay to introduce it whenever, as a coach, you feel like it's good to be introduced. There's no perfect time, but every time is a perfect time.
Yep.
So how long is the court? The court is 78 feet long down the middle or in a straight line.
Yep.
But what do we do most of the time? Cross courts. Well, guess what? When you tell a kid, hey, if you don't want to hit softer, because all the kids like to hit harder, right? So hit cross court, and guess what? Now you're dealing with 88 to 90 feet, and the net's 6 inches lower, and you bring them up to the net, and they measure it. You stand next to your hip, and you put your finger here, then you walk over to the doubles alley, and then it's like up to here, wherever, and it's like, oh wow, and they're like, holy cow. When you say the geometry of the court, it is absolutely critical that we arm these players with this information, because math is real. And when they know that there's a bigger target for us to hit into, they can still be aggressive. If you can be aggressive to a conservative target and have that be part of your game plan, that's massive. And that's a whole philosophy now that you can have from a coach and a client that you guys can share, and they can understand. It's like, wow, coach says I can still be aggressive. Sometimes he says I can't be aggressive, but it's okay to be aggressive as long as I hit to this conservative target. And a conservative target isn't straight down the middle.
Yep.
It's cross court, where there's 10 more feet of space and the net's 6 inches lower. Now, and then you talk about then the apex of the ball. I think Tarun mentioned a short ball before. Then you get a short ball. As long as it bounces higher than the net, then we maybe can take it down the line. If it's below the net, maybe we do something different with it. So this geometry inflection into the match, into your training, into the juniors, 100% all in, anytime. Doesn't matter when.
Thank you, Craig. And I know I'm going to be rewatching this episode, this part specifically, because this is so important. And I'm glad that you mentioned this.
Yeah.
I got to keep reminding myself too, right? This is the geometry of the court. Don't try to hit down the line when you shouldn't. Use cross court. So I'm so thankful for you bringing all that mathematics up.
Real quick, one last item with that. It's there, the way I kind of formulate that with our juniors, it's there, that math, that geometry is there to help you and support you. And that's like your friend. It tells you where to hit the ball and how to guide the ball back. And it's like an extra coach on the court. And that's kind of an extra, it's a fundamental practice for you to continue to do those things that you develop in practice. So when you're out, if your coach is there during practice and your classes, but he's not there during a match, well, all those fundamentals are still there with you when you do play.
Right.
And that part is critical for your students' confidence to continue to be successful, or at least confident in trying to execute the plan that you're trying to put together to win those games, to win those sets, to win those matches, and all those things in between, those 15 seconds between points that we talked about. It's absolutely critical.
Exactly. So there's so much good content for our viewers and listeners. Tarun, before we sign off, the whole purpose of us coming with the content here, not just this episode, but all of our other episodes, is our vision at Tennishackery is that we are going to help juniors. We're going to help recreational tennis adults, men and women of all ages, improve their game in various aspects, right? Based on the conversation that we have had today, Tarun, can you say a few words as how Tennishackery's vision is to help our game, make sure that juniors and or adults don't make the same mistakes. How can
Absolutely.
we come into play? How we can play a pivotal role and add value to their game, optimize the performance of the tennis game that each of these individuals play.
Absolutely. So, great. It's been a wonderful discussion. So, Craig, to build on what you just said before, and so I'm answering that based on what Craig said. You mentioned that many coaches are there on the practice drill courts, but they are not able to come and see the matches for whatever reason. So we at Tennis Hackery would like to bridge that gap. We would like to be that those one of those coaches who can actually, with the advent of the smartphone and video, we would like to do the match video analysis and help players improve their games. Again, this is based on the fundamental principles of Tennis Hackery, which is the fundamentals of the game, the fitness aspect, and the mental aspect of the game. So we live at the intersection of these three, and we can help players bridge that gap from their drills performance, where we know that they're performing in a low stress environment, and there's this gap in the match where many folks have due to whatever reasons, any deficiencies or any issue, they're not able to perform at their peaks. So we would definitely like to see those videos and help players with it. So that being said, we'd definitely like to say that please tag us on Instagram or any of the social networks at Tennis Factory if you have a match video or a technique video or a drill video. Please tag at Tennis Hackery, and we will do our best to take a look at that, analyze it, and DM you back, DM as in direct message you back with a response. If you would like to share it privately, please email us at tennishackery@gmail.com. So we will leave the contact information in the show notes. And very soon we are going to automate all this process once we launch our website, which should be in a week or two. So yes, so we are extremely excited to offer value and help players play their best tennis.
And with people like Craig Lazarchik and Alex Porta,
Yes.
who's Alex on vacation, but
Fortunately.
they're such great, fortunately, yeah, they're such great people to work with. I've gone into a training session with Craig, and I've hit with Alex. I think
Yes.
all of our potential adults or students would really love, not just but love to work with them, and their feedback is going to be based on their experience of years of coaching and or playing. So we are really excited to make Tennis Hackery big, and definitely look forward to working with our folks very soon. So Craig, any final words?
No, I agree, and just to have the opportunity to work with this group, and we all do tennis for the most part 24/7, and our family knows.
Yeah.
It's like I'm on the court all day.
Yes.
And then I come home and it's like tennis channels on, and then I Instagram tennis, and then podcast tennis. And do you have any? It's like, yeah, I've got one or two other things, but it's pretty much 24/7 tennis. So
yes.
to be able to share that with you guys, and if there's any thoughts and helpfulness that I and we can provide to the tennis universe, we will do that for you 24/7, because whether you're Tarun or Soham or Alex or Craig, that's what we do. And we look forward to doing it for the next, chunk of years, and hopefully we'll be doing it for a long time here at Tennis Hackery.
Great words
Thank you,
indeed, Craig. Thank you so much for that. All right. And with that, we come to the end of episode 16. I'll launch into the marketing spiel again. At Tennis Hackery with a Y is our social media handle. You can find us on X, which used to be Twitter. Instagram we are very active on Instagram. It's the same handle, at Tennis Hackery with a Y. We are on Facebook. The video version of this recording of this podcast goes to YouTube, and the audio version goes to Spotify. We have plans to get on the Apple iTunes store and other podcast platforms as well. please like, share, subscribe, and comment. So your feedback helps us grow and spread the word out. Please tell your friends about Tennis Hackery and help us grow. Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.